Hi there. This is Pastor Dave Bryan, Senior Pastor at the Church of Glad Tidings and the Embassy of Heaven. And we're here with a special guest today, and that's T. Hogan. She's going to tell you her story. And I'm very happy to have T with us today. I want you to remember that wherever you are, the times of being passive and letting other people do it, those times are over. It's
Mhm.
time to roar. That's what this is all about. T has been roaring and bringing up the 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 travesty, the tragedy of what has happened in her life, and shining light onto the problem of child trafficking and the involvements of governments and power structures. I'll let T tell her own story, but I'm just thankful for her friendship. And so, T. Hogan, welcome to It's Time to Roar. Tell us a little bit about your stories.
Thank you so much, Pastor Dave. I am like really, really honored to be here today. And I just want you to know it's definitely serendipitous and it's a major, major blessing just to be here with you. And I'm
Well,
excited, okay.
great.
So,
Well, we're
yeah,
thrilled that you're here,
yeah.
and I've been happy to get to know you. It hasn't been that long, but it seems like we're old buddies, old pals from a long time ago already. I think that's just because God knit our hearts together and we're in the same fight. But tell us a little bit about who you are and what your story is.
Right. So I want to just tell you that. So I am somebody who has been a victim, but I am now an overcomer of government sponsored kidnapping. Okay. And so I'm somebody who is I like to make this joke. It's like the hair club for men, I'm not just a client. I fight in this, okay? So
Well,
I've been, I've been somebody who has been a victim of child trafficking, international child trafficking, and
yes,
also it's international kidnapping as well.
right. I wanted to go back to that because you said a victim of government kidnapping.
Mhm. Right.
That is a mouthful. I want everybody to hear that because it's something that until you go down the rabbit hole and find out what's going on, people think, oh no, it wouldn't be a government agency that did that. So I just wanted to
Right.
highlight that again. She's been a victim of government kidnapping. And so that's what we're going to delve into. So go ahead, T. I just wanted to focus on that because it's a startling concept for some people to wrap their heads around.
Right, correct, correct. So government-sponsored kidnapping is kidnapping that's not off the streets. This is something that children are kidnapped through our judiciary and also through CPS. So these are two apparatuses and it's just a methodology to track children, steal them from good parents. And I know there's some parents that are, that have probably got some trouble, but these are mostly good parents that this has happened to. I want to just say that around the world.
Yep, absolutely.
Right.
What kind of things do government agencies exploit to steal children?
So there's a myriad really. With that said, they again, you have children that they're using. This is through intelligence agencies. Let me just say that first and foremost, that are behind the scenes. You have a shadow government behind these secret courts, okay, and they're using children to exploit them from the highest levels, which we'll go into that bloodline hierarchy, to then they use children in child sex trafficking rings, child pornography. This goes into children that are actually even made into diamonds. Okay, this goes into children that are also then organ harvested and then used for ritual abuse and ritual sacrifice. Okay, this
Yeah.
is serious business.
We're just getting ready for this Rev 17 conference. Of course, T, you'll be one of the speakers there, and we'll welcome everybody to come join us. That's June 20th, 21st, and 22nd here at Glad Tidings again for the Rev 17 conference. And we'll be talking about child trafficking, its extent, how gross it is, how widespread it is, and what we can do to stop it. But Ann Vandersteel was going to be one of our speakers, and she had a conflict, family issue, and she had to cancel. But she just sent her a little video that she had produced for the Rev 17. And she told their T about a family that had all of their children taken from them, a good family. The kids loved mom and dad. Mom and dad loved the kids. They were a good
Yes.
family.
Yeah.
And they took all of their kids and imprisoned the mom and dad for 30 days in jail, each of them, because they didn't want an infant to have a certain kind of vaccine. And that was a trigger point
Yes.
that they just saw, wow, we can use this against this good family.
Right.
It should be a moot point. A
Right.
parent has a right to decide whether their children are vaccinated at all. So it should be a moot point. But they thought we can use this, and then we can make a case that they're neglectful parents. They were not neglectful. They were probably more conscientious than the other parents. But they
Right.
made a case that they were neglectful, stole their children, put them in jail, put the children into the foster program. Just heard that yesterday from Kim Vandersteel. So tell us a little bit about how that happened in your life, what you've seen, and anything else you want to share about this.
Right. So I want to address that. I spoke with Anne in Washington, D.C., Anne Vandersteel and Maureen Steele, amazing women, I want to say, who are really in the fight against government-sponsored kidnapping and CPS used in that apparatus. And I want to just make a comment about that's the Izzy Rivera case. It's very important. These are normal parents. That's called medical kidnapping. I want to just address what that is actually called. And let me tell you right now, that is an apparatus that is used right now at the very top level to steal children through the courts, to create a reason to target a child, to traffic them and to kidnap them using our judiciary and using CPS. CPS is not a federal organization in the first place. Most people don't know that. It's a crown corporation, and that's a whole nother, that gets us into another rabbit hole. But I just want to make that clear. It's just an apparatus. So in my situation, these are different areas. It's called legal kidnapping. So it's nothing legal about it. It's unlawful and it's illegal how they do this type of, it's a methodology, okay? And
Right.
so I want to go back to the 80s is where they had family law courts that literally didn't exist before then. These are civil courts, okay? And so what happened is they started the intelligence agencies along with these different realms of government, okay, but they're really shadow governments that are basically using a black robe society. And I know that
Right.
sounds cuckoo for cocoa puffs, but it's real, okay?
It's
These
real.
are
Yeah.
these are judges lining their pockets and they are targeting children. So I'm going to go into my situation, but I wanted the audience to have a little background in this. And
Good.
I want to go off into something really quickly. So there was an amazing fighter, and I know Dave, you're going to know who Senator Nancy Schaefer. She was one of the first forerunners back in the 80s fighting against CPS. She had the information that went into the bonds and goes into the banking world about how these children are all, it's their commodities, is what it is. So this
Yes.
is where this apparatus starts. But what happens is in Los Angeles, what happens is there's an exposure that she was going to expose showing how CPS was used to use the judicial system with these judges, with a ring of officials that were in a child trafficking ring that were also doing satanic ritual abuse. So there was a modus operandi
Yep.
involved in that, okay, to use these judges that were lining their pockets, and the judges were part of that ring, and they were also part of a literally an SRA, satanic ritual abuse child trafficking ring. They were one of the members in the Black Robe Society, handing the children over to that ring, and a lot of them were in the intelligence agency, CIA, and into different program projects as well. So
Yes.
this is like, this is the 90% way that children are being targeted by good families and good parents around the world, and they're being stolen into these
Yeah.
government projects,
Yeah.
literally.
T, thank you so much for that. And I just want to mention this. There is a misnomer that's common among people that evil people mind their own business and they do rituals in cellars and they don't get out into the public and they just want to go into some oak grove somewhere and howl at the moon. That is not the case. Evil is very aggressive, it's very militant, it's very organized,
Yeah.
and it's very goal oriented. The evil doers, they have set their sights on taking control of the entire planet and its population. And the reason I wanted to mention that, T, is it's hard for some people to imagine, like, why would a judge be an evil person, or why would, somebody that's a witch want to be involved in CPS, for instance. But I'm just saying this so that people understand it's not just coincidental. They set their sights on working their way into positions of power
Right.
that can be used for their purposes. And their purposes are to destroy family and,
Yes.
even more specifically, to steal children. And
Right.
it's a very, very big focus. And it's been around a long time.
Yes.
And it's something to really be contended against.
Absolutely is. And I think it really, when we look at the whole picture, this is nothing new under the sun, right? I mean, this is
Right.
like you just said, this has been going on for a really, really, really long time. So I just want to say that the way they're doing it now through the judiciary or through our government is just an accelerated way to steal children. It's just they basically, it's a well-oiled machine is what they did.
It
Okay.
is.
So you're talking about the
Yes.
Masonic Brotherhood in and I know people just, it's hard for people to wrap their mind, but you're talking about secret orders, you're talking about a whole
Yep.
hierarchy, okay? And
Right.
this is what this is. And so I want to just say what these people are doing is going all the way back to the beginning of time, back to Nimrod, back to the fallen angels. And like
Yep.
in my particular case, I have a bloodline case, and it's known as a hierarchy. I have a hierarchy child named Jonah Reef. And so Jonah is a child that's a bloodline child. So where I'm in that, I want to say they are tracking a lot of their own, they think it's their seed. They're the seed that comes from Nimrod that goes to these Nephilim families that intermarry. And I know that sounds crazy, but the church is asleep. They don't know what
Yep.
Genesis 6, they just glaze over it like as though
Yep.
it just doesn't exist. But when you dive into Genesis 6, that these fallen angels did marry human women. So again,
Absolutely.
we got nothing new under the sun. They've just taken it fast forward and they've used technology, and our judiciary, our CPS is just an apparatus to track those children. Not that they don't take the other ones, the expendables, and they're just as important as the hierarchy children. It's just that those ones they end up using, and they murder them in a ritual, satanic ritual, but they believe it gains them power, is what they
Mm.
believe. They
Yeah.
believe they're going to move up in a Masonic level in government. They're going to gain power, and they believe they're going to rule literally with Lucifer. These are Luciferians. These are not the
Yep.
Nakash, they believe.
Right.
These are not people that just believe in Satan. These are people that believe that they are going to reside and rule with Lucifer when that day comes, and they're going to usurp God. This is what they believe, not what T believes, what they believe. And these children
Right.
are a commodity. And so, but they're also different ones they use to groom into these nefarious positions, to program them into those nefarious positions as well. Like I have a child that's in that type of level, unfortunately. And we have to stand together to say, we're going to be that Isaiah 61 ministries around the world to
Come
say,
on, T.
no more. That this is what God's called us to do.
Come
That's what he
on.
said. With this right here, this whole rescue me, Jonah is
Yeah.
one of those children. I can't know if you can see
Yeah.
that or not, but it's rescue
There
me.
you go. Right there.
There it
Yeah.
is. Rescue me. This is what he's saying. He's saying,
Yeah.
rescue me. Okay.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
So that's
So,
the keys to heaven.
T, tell us a little bit about the the as many details as you want, but tell us about what has happened and how Jonah was taken and what you've been trying to do to shine light on that.
Okay. So I'm going to give the story. It's a very convoluted case. It's one of the unfortunately most egregious and not something you want to be known for to be I have to say, because it's one of the most egregious cases because there was nothing lawful or legal about anything they did, and it goes into how they frame mischief by law in the beginning. But I was a normal mom. This could be happen to any mom out there. I didn't have any criminal record. I didn't have anything like that. I worked in Hollywood. That's part of where I got targeted as well. And I was an art director for over 20 years. I've been a prop master. I had a coffee place. I did ministry. I would minister people to people, and it was called Heavenly Perks, and
Awesome.
yeah,
Great name, T.
yeah. I thought, it's like piece of heaven. I had heavenly angel coffee angels, and
Yeah.
I was,
Beautiful.
yeah, I was known for that. And it was actually kind of funny. I mean, I had people from like law enforcement would come, and I'd minister to them at Heavenly Perks. They get a little bit of a heavenly perk in their coffee, right? So
That's awesome.
yeah, so I was normal mom, living my life, and I was targeted through that and through industry and also through family bloodlines. But to make a long story short, so here I was, normal mom, and having my child. And my family parents had lived in the South, so I moved away out of California. I lived in La Jolla, California, and like I said, worked in the film industry in Hollywood. Moved away and moved to the South. Lived in the tri-state area of Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee because I wanted to be near my parents. And we were moving the Heavenly Perks. It was going to be Heavenly Perks Enchanted Gardens, and in the South is what it was going to be. And I was also going to get into children's puppetry ministry too, as well. I worked with
Huh.
people that knew God TV people, and so that was where the Lord was bringing me. And so, to make a long story short, I had a group of people. It was a ring of people. I had a primary group outside the United States who paid a primary group inside the United States, sorry, secondary group inside the United States to target us and to come after us. So I literally, Pastor Dave, I went through 3 kidnappings of Jonah. It's kind of funny. His name is Jonah. The Lord gave me that name.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Right.
like 3 days and 3 nights, the belly of the whale, right? It's just really,
Wow.
well, I mean, there's something supernatural about just that. But so I believe the Lord's going to bring him out of that third day, third night in the belly of
Yeah.
the whale. Okay.
Yeah.
However, this case goes into 3 states and 2 continents. So
Wow.
by November 5th of 2012 was the last time I saw my child, was the third kidnapping of my child. So, and by that time, I didn't really know really what I was up against, but I'm just gonna, in a nutshell, this ring of officials goes all the way up to Kamala Harris and Governor Newsom and all these people that I know that you know what it's like to go up against. And so I get it. I've been up against these people too, and this goes all the way to Brian Podesta in the State Department, to the Obama
Mm.
administration, the Clinton machine, and this is during their administration. So this is how these guys are all involved in making sure that my child not only just leaves like my sight, but he also leaves the United States through John Kerry in the State Department, literally like on a passport that said he wasn't a citizen of any country of the United States, and he ends up in Australia by 2013, February 26th of 2013, and then he's profiled in nude photos on March 4th of 2013 on Facebook out of New South Wales, Australia. And he hasn't been seen technically. We've had leads.
Yeah.
He's never been. I've
What
never seen
what
him in
what
person.
age was he when he was taken to Australia there?
But the last time I saw him on November 5th of 2012, my son was about to turn 5 on December 18th, 2012. So by the time he leaves the United States, he's just a little over 5.
Yeah, wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. So to make a long story short, so I was in DC by this time. Had I I I thought the answer again was to get into federal court. I had worked with forensic people into the second kidnapping, and that gets into a whole nother story that we'll have to, when we have more time, we'll talk about that. But anyway, the Lord put a group of federal forensic guys in my lap, in that surrounded me. Thank God, that worked for federal lawyers of 27 years getting mandates and injunctions. So they took me under their wing. Now, they didn't realize how serious this was either. We thought that was going to be a slam dunk. They just knew they're going to come back after your child, and they're going to come after him again. You're going to have to you're going to have to get in federal court. We all thought that was the answer, okay?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so, and I even had people in Alabama all the way to Montgomery that were helping me, that were representatives in Alabama, the state I lived in. I lived in Henniger, Alabama, is where I had moved. They had jurisdiction over this case. So when I got to
Mm.
DC, they took jurisdiction over the case, and I happened to get in 2013. I got a case open with the United States State Department with children's issues, and with the passport police, and all the way up to the bureau. And I want to tell you, they were guiding me, but we were up against intelligence people, not like I just didn't understand in children's matters side.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
didn't know till fast forward later on, Brian Podesta is one of these people inside the State Department. And
Wow.
so in 2013, I became a whistleblower, is what was going on. And I had these forensic guys that were guiding me, but this team inside the State Department were also helping me go into federal court. I did file in federal court in Washington, D.C., and I did get a case open for international child kidnapping and child trafficking.
So one department of the government was helping you, but really it was governmental structures,
Right,
shadow government structures that
right,
was actually responsible for the kidnapping.
right.
And then T, how did, as a 5-year-old, how did they snatched him? Was it something like, they reprimanded you for not vaccinating him and took him out of the house, or did they just take him from the schoolyard? How'd that happen?
Mine was, this is so preposterous. It just is shocking. So what these people did, I want to make it known. So I just recently was married for the first time in my life this year. Okay. I was never married before. I was waiting on the Lord. Yeah, I got ahead of him. Okay. But I will tell you, they used a fake dad who is a Blackwater CIA member, is what he was, with a ring of other people who I had a transgender man who impersonated me as a female. I really wish they could have used a female. It really is kind of insulting, but that's beside the point. One joke.
See,
Okay. But anyway, but then they used a couple other females to impersonate me. This is a ring of officials working with, I mean, your DA, your Attorney General, Kamala Harris. She was Attorney General at the time in California. They
yeah.
used people that were in the judiciary in Alabama that were part of the KKK. So they used a ring of people to pretend that I was married. In the shadow government, they were switching out files to make it look like I was another mother who had 4 children, by the way, just behind my back. I didn't know that was all going on at the time. So what they
Hmm.
did was they actually pretended that I was married to this fake dad, and that I had lost custody at birth, that I was just, that I was just mentally off. They used this head of the CPS who lied to officials over state lines, because I happened to be in North Carolina visiting people in ministry, and I was also trying to get help with somebody I knew that I was told was an advocate that helped me get in federal court, is what it was.
Mm.
So I knew they were going to come after my son again. I knew, but I knew it was a matter of time.
Yeah.
But I didn't know they were going to pretend that they used like that I was married. There was no warrant, no paperwork, no nothing, no probable cause certificate. There was no cause in action. That's a legal term. There was no nothing. They used a teletype. This happened in just 5 hours from my house in Alabama, in Charlotte, North Carolina. Okay, I was visiting a church there called Morning Star. and with people inside that church. And so I will tell you, they even the police at the time said, look, we don't have any paperwork. The people in California said they were going to send it later. This is a state
Mm,
that didn't have jurisdiction. The guy they used
right.
was a resident of Colorado, and I was a resident of Alabama, so they didn't have any standing or authority to do what they're doing. So can you
But
imagine? That's
but
legal
the
kidnapping.
story they made up was that the birth father was somebody else that had a rightful authority in the child's life, so that they were taking away from you and giving it to this fictional birth father. Is that right?
Correct, right. Like the birth father wasn't even, he had secretly helped me behind the scenes. And so they
Yeah.
threatened him. But this was right, a fictional fake father that I
Yeah.
knew him, but they,
Wow.
yes, that's what they did. So there was no paternity trial never
Right.
proved, you know what I mean? They didn't want that. So this is
Right.
legal kidnapping, folks.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
typical legal
And it
kidnapping.
could happen to anybody, couldn't it,
Anybody.
T? Yeah.
Anybody. And I want to just state it, I want to just briefly touch on another case. It did. In 2013, I was working with a group of advocates with it was called California Protective Parents Association, and some other, and Safe Kids International too. I knew people that were connected to that were fighting. They were fighting legal kidnapping, okay, and they were fighting CPS. And I want you to know that there was another case of another mother on the East Coast. Her name, and I want to just give some light to this. To Mary Sequin, and Mary Sequin too was a mother that her son, was taken exactly like mine, and she was making a lot of she was roaring like I was, made a lot of noise, and they falsely incarcerated her for a year. I went through this too. And I want to tell you that
They incarcerated her for a year?
yes, to silence her. Okay.
Wow,
And
girl.
I've gone down that road. They did it to me too. And I'm going to go down that road in just 1 second. But let me tell you, they used a guy, he was a CEO that wasn't the father of her child either. No biological anything. And they used him to kidnap her child. And the problem is that Mary Sequin didn't understand. She left. This was happening on the East Coast. She left, went down to Texas, thinking she's going to be protected. She was married to somebody who was trying to help her. They kidnapped her out of the house in Texas, and she has never been seen from again. And I know people that
Oh,
were, yeah,
T.
disappeared. Nobody knows whatever happened to her.
So they took her child and then just erased her.
Right. After she gets out of the jail for a year because she still was roaring, making noise, the
Wow.
whistleblower, no different than me, but she's never been seen from again. And the people
Wow.
from California Protective Parents were on the phone with her at the time. People I know that are founders. I'm not going to go into their names at the moment, but they were on the phone with her. And I know other advocates that were fighting with her in Washington, D.C., and that were literally had their cases filed in the U.S. Supreme Court. So I want people to know this is real. So when I became a whistleblower,
Wow.
I actually had gone even to the Russell building and was started even to get the attention of the senator of my state, which was Senator Jeff Sessions. I was working with his Judiciary Counsel Danielle at the Russell building. I was due to do a presentation on Title 4D with the and how the money was being laundered through the backyard in Senator Sessions' backyard in Alabama, and how they were the judiciary, the people in his backyard were being paid off, okay, to help the people in California. So on April 3rd of 2013, the State Department people that I was working with wanted me to go get another police report. Everything starts with a police report. But if the police are involved and you can't do that, then their
Yeah.
next step was to go. They said, hey, we need you to get a report out of Birmingham, which was 2.5 hours away from me, where my home had been in Alabama on the northern
Right.
corner, and to go to the FBI sex squad. Now, heck, I wouldn't know how to do that, so I was being guided. And so, like
Yeah.
again,
Right.
I was being guided to where to file the passport police. Nobody knows to do all that to go get the Hague Convention application.
Right.
If I didn't have help, no parent on their right mind or even would know how to do any of that. So God
Yeah.
put those people in my path to help me.
Wow.
And so,
Wow.
Yes. And so, and again, I had the wherewithal and the legal prowess to understand how to do those things too. So here I was thinking, okay, I'm going to go to Birmingham. I stopped at my hair salon with my hairdresser, in little Ider, Alabama, and I get kidnapped myself on April 3rd of 2013 by a man named Josh York, who impersonated a U.S. Marshal named Chuck Robert Reynolds that he didn't even look like, and literally like he threatened the hairdresser, and I'm kidnapped at gunpoint, taken a
Wow.
guy, and again the US
But
Marshals have it right, and I
he
was
did that under the guise of being a U.S. Marshal. He just came right into the hair salon and said, "You need to come with me."
right, he had no paperwork, no warrants, no nothing.
Wow.
Yep. And I mean, again, and I've reported I want, later on down the road, I've reported this to the U.S. Marshals. I actually had the U.S. Marshals in Washington, D.C., inside that federal court. They're right to the right-hand side when I was going in doing filings in the federal court in Washington, D.C. Literally, I had the U.S. Marshals involved myself.
Hmm.
So this guy, who was just a local investigator cop, he had white hair. He was like, had a little goatee, and he was 6'2", impersonates Chuck Robert Reynolds, who's 5'9", in his 40s, balding, and is not even involved in the case. So, and he admitted later on he was just doing a favor for the people in California for Kamala Harris.
Wow.
Right. And I'm held for
No.
91 days. There's no such thing as 91. It's either 72 hours, you better have a warrant. If you don't, you got to
Yeah.
release the person. And
Yeah.
then it goes to 90 days over state lines. There's got to be between attorney generals and governors. There's got to be governor's warrants. These guys,
Right.
nothing. And so my forensic guys got the case investigated all the way up to the governor of Alabama and the attorney general Luther Strange at the time. They said, we have nobody by Tammy's name, and there's nobody. What are you talking about? We have nobody.
Yeah.
They did investigation. They find out that the secretary to the governor gave them a teletype, and she rubber stamped it from the former governor. It was basically like, it's like doing a photocopy and you've got a rubber stamp on it. And so that's what they tried to pretend that they showed me that they were holding me under. And I said, that's from the former governor, you clowns. So
Wow.
so again, I'm getting these people investigated with the forensic guys outside, and I already had in place, my dad was already my power of attorney. I had a structure of power of attorneys. They were filing stuff around me sitting in there, but they tried to keep it quiet that I was in there. If the hairdresser had not let my dad know that I was in there, I would have disappeared. And
Wow.
she had the courage, even though they threatened her, they'd throw her in there too if she told anybody. This because the guy Josh York was with another guy. So, and they had
Yeah.
there was no U.S. Marshals on their shirts. There was no U.S. Marshal vehicles, which they have to have, and they have to show a badge. None of that happened. Anyway, by the 91st day, the heat is on the people in California, the ring of people. And so the governor of Alabama and Luther Strange, attorney general, the heat is on to go, where is she? And my dad and the forensic guys are, hey, she's being held in this DeKalb County men's side of the jail in solitary confinement. And they held me
Wow.
under a false name named Tammy Reese, somebody who's 10 years my junior, from like literally from Selma, Alabama, all the way down the bottom of the state. I've never even been there or lived there, that part of the state of
Wow.
Alabama. So the
So
91st
you were
day,
checked into that holding facility under a fictitious name?
fictitious name, correct.
Wow.
So, right.
Girl, you've been through it.
I have been. So again, it's a federal kidnapping. So the 91st day, here comes one of the local cop, Carol Schneider, who's involved in the legal kidnapping of my son the second time around. And she comes and she's in civilian clothes and with a buddy of hers out of Carlsbad. And they drive me through 3 states, put me on a puddle jumper plane, and federally kidnap me to California, is what
No
happens,
kidding.
and hide me in that jail under Nancy Clark is what they did, and under Jonah's name. So, and I had people who knew, that found out that I was their advocates, and then they would put my name up. But then when those guys weren't around, and the State Department people would try to look, then I'd be under Nancy Clark, hidden in there. So it was a
Wow.
shadow government that was playing
Yeah.
musical files, is how they did it. So
Yeah.
it took a lot of advocates trying to find me in that system in California. I was never on the docket in 2013, at the end of 2013, and they took me before the judges, Judge So, Judge Irabidi, and Judge Pollock, the people that did the federal kidnapping, were involved in the kidnapping of my own child. This is the people they were taking me in front of, when you know that you can't be the judge,
Wow.
jury, and executioner. You can't do that. That's
Yeah.
complete fraud.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
that's RICO fraud. It's racketeering, and they're trying to cover up what they did it to cover up the kidnapping of Jonah is what they did, the international kidnapping, and they also wanted to hide the fact that the CPS head, Lupita Zuniga Castro, she was the head of CPS, who was trying to say, oh no, she was married. I've never been married at that time. I've never been married until
Mm.
this year, 2025.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
these people were trying to cover up that they also had Jonah in a daycare when they took him to California the second time as a DOD daycare called Carlsbad Country Daycare, and they were doing satanic ritual abuse. That Jonah was he was his own little whistleblower. He had actually stated what to literally to social services in North Carolina, like the third time before he leaves the country. He's telling what these people did. They told him about the molestation, the ritual abuse, the people,
And
the
how
women
old was
people.
Jonah at the time?
He was literally almost 5 years old, 3 weeks shy
Wow.
of turning five.
Little guy. Wow.
He
Bless his heart.
Yes. So he was literally, this is a kid that had a spiritual gift. He really had a prophetic gifting on him. So he would tell us, like, two months before this even happened, the third time he was taken, he told us the bad people were coming, mommy. How many were going to be there?
Wow.
So they took him for his spiritual gifts, is what it was, because he had
Yeah.
a very, very strong spiritual prophetic gifting on him, is what
Yeah.
it was. He was like a little prophet.
And he was taken at 5. That's been how many years ago?
2012. 2012.
Wow. Wow. And and you don't know what they've been, you don't know any details of his life since then?
I do. I do.
You do?
So I want to get into that. So I want you to know,
Yeah.
excuse me. I'm taking a sip of coffee. So with that said, to make a long story short. So anyway, I had a lot of people who found me in the system in California finally on February 7th of 2014. I had some media people that finally figured out where I was that day, and they witnessed the judge, me saying, the judge, you've held me without any charges, without any you violated my civil liberties under Hollingsworth versus Perry. I said, you need to let me go and give me back my child. And at that moment, the judge goes, I know, and I don't care. I'm going to put you on trial anyways. And boom.
Wow.
And the media happened to sneak in, and it was game on, let me tell you. And at that point,
Wow.
they were started the DA's office and the DOJ. They were swarmed with media people, and it was. I mean, it was the Lord. I got to tell you. I mean, that
Yeah.
these
Sounds like it.
people literally put the pressure on to get me out. And while I was in that place, I started a women's ministry prayer group that grew to 60 women. So, because they sent people
Good
in
for
to try to
you.
hurt me, yeah, to give up
Now,
jurisdiction of my child.
so when you were captured and kidnapped and put into this facility, did you have immediate family or friends or work people that just didn't know whatever happened to you? You just disappeared?
Well, because I had the POAs on the outside with my dad and the forensic guys, they were busy on the outside, and there was advocates I had prior that were helping me.
Okay.
So they pulled them all in. Some of them were in California, as it was.
Okay.
Okay. And
Okay.
some of them were in different parts of the United States. And so I had all these people that in California to Arizona that there were ADA advocates too, that a lot of people at your conference are probably going to know because they are
Mm.
fighting legal kidnapping and medical kidnapping all the way to Arizona. So I
Wow.
had these people helping me, is what it was on the outside, and putting pressure and exposing this case. And it became a well-known case, unfortunately, that it was being held without, you know what I mean, for it was something like, violation visitation custody decree, which you can't hold somebody for an hour for, just so you're aware, okay?
Mm.
Let alone put them on a fake trial. So I just want to say that. Anyway,
Yeah.
I ended up getting out, and with their help, and I had done rallies. I was really speaking out about illegal kidnapping. There was vigils done because Jonah was also taken the same way as another little girl named Lexi Dillon, by Kamala Harris. The same ring that's in Orange County, all the way up the state of California, all the way up the left coast. I'm just going to say this is a big,
Yeah.
big,
Right.
big, big ring, okay, of officials that are intelligence world that goes all the way to Aquino. This goes back
Wow.
a long time. I want you to know, all the way probably to people you know from the 80s.
All the way to Aquino, did you say?
Yes, this is a
Oh,
big
wow.
ring. Yes. So this
Wow.
they've been operating for a very long time. And again, I'm just going to say this is just an apparatus of a spider web that has literally branched not just nationwide but worldwide. And it's a well-oiled machine that goes back even to the UK
Wow.
of how they've been legally kidnapping children through our judiciary. Okay, and using the CPS system as well behind the scenes. Human Health Services did a black market adoption of my child also, is how is part of that apparatus that went up through the state of California. So they were involved with on the paperwork. So that's part of the legal international kidnapping of my child was a black market adoption using 3 counterfeit birth certificates with
Wow.
Human Health Services Agency out of Sacramento all the way to San Diego and also all the way to Fort Payne, Alabama. And they got some friends to help them out of Charlotte that were just some people that were actors. So this is a
Yeah.
spider web. This is a spider web.
Wow.
So I want you to know after this happened to me, I was doing vigils and I was almost kidnapped out of a family house. I had media people around me. There was and they said, I had some people that said, listen, you're going to have to get bigger help than this. This is not over for you. And I had a media person too that said, listen, you're up against Illuminati. They're going to come find you. And I had,
Yeah.
again, ADA advocates around me thinking this again, thought this was over until where I was staying doing a big vigil in Los Angeles that literally the house almost gets broken into, or actually they tried to break in a window is what they did. And I would just happen to be not there that night. So I was referred to an organization that was an anti-trafficking organization that did rescue. And they said, you are going to have to be safe housed. So that was shocking for me. And then again, I'm still trying to get my son. How do I get him rescued?
Right.
So they said, we're going to refer you to somebody in the State Department. And I know you've met my executive director, Dottie Laster. So I ended up meeting her, and she ends up partnering and putting me together with other organizations that I became their client is what happened. And I can't
Mm.
say who they are, but for
Yeah.
their protection. So I end up being safe housed myself. So I know what it's like to be a trafficked person and living as somebody who's being hunted and having to be safe housed. And it was,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, when did they safe house you, and how long did you stay in there?
so that happened. It started from September 2014, and this went all the way until, well, actually, I still live this way. I'm not completely. I'm.
Oh.
I'll kind of get to that. Those organizations safe housed me because I went to an international base, came back to a USA base, and then there was private houses, so that also helped safe house me. But and that went on till like 2017, and then I was safe housed by private, small other safe houses after that. And then I created my own teams. But you got to know what happened. Well, I'm on this international base. The Lord was like, you gotta pour into this. It's about paying it back. Because I was like a sponge with my own case. They didn't have to access the computer. They'd be like, all right,
Yeah.
T, they're like, we need to go over the white paper of your case. Let's talk about, there's this one area. What did they do again? And what was the situation? Where, what? So they had me working on an FBI database called Sentinel, putting all my own information into it because I was like a walking, talking, white paper for them, is what
Yeah.
it was. So they could just access me. So,
Yeah.
so with that said, I ended up helping on other cases too, because I understood the legalities of how they were doing what they did. So
Yeah.
they would ask me, hey, do you know if they did this or that? So that's where I began to be utilized in other cases. And then they started to train me on this international base to be an international executive administrator.
Mm,
So I began to work in this. Like I said, I wasn't just a client anymore. I started to
yeah.
learn the safe house world and how it works. And then I was brought back to the USA base, and then I got to see how other smaller private homes were partnering. And then we had a compromise, is what happened, and one of the organizations got compromised, and it was very frightening. And there, I got separated out even from Dottie and others. And
Mhm.
I mean, it was the most terrifying experience. I had the shadow government, like Knights Templar type police coming after me. And it went on. This was very terrifying. And I'm trying to find new help. And in that, I ended up finding new help, but that went on for a year. And let me tell you, I was deep underground. I was very, very deep underground. And
Wow.
with that said, I had advocates from the other former organizations helping me. And from there, we started building our own teams. And because I knew how to do it, I knew how the safe housing worked. I lived it. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I know how it works. And with that said, little by little, I started meeting those that were in decoding and doing trafficking trails. I started getting trained in trafficking trails, and I ended up getting new
Wow.
help. And I started learning how to locate and do spiritual mapping as well. And I have even been trained as an intercessor in integration as well, all this time. So I work in prevention now as well with my own
Yeah.
teams to stop legal kidnappings.
Yeah.
So, so I want to just tell you
So
that
you
story.
went from being a victim to being part of the team that was sleuthing this out, and um, they had you in a like a victim's witness program, safe house, right, for a while.
Basically.
But then, so how long have you been? Um, well, let me ask it this way, T. You started out and still are focused exclusively on Jonah trying to get your son back.
Right.
But at this point, you're exposing things that would be um, useful to anyone else that was being taken advantage of, right?
Correct. Correct. So I want to just tell you one of the things that happened in this process. Um, all of a sudden, because of these teams, there was other cases that they were happened to be working on, is what happened.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, through the
And
years.
they were
And
all cases of government-sponsored kidnapping.
correct, correct. I want to
Wow.
tell you, yes. So all of a sudden, I'm like, hey, the Lord had it on my heart, like, pay it forward. Like, I had a lot of tools already in my arsenal, in my armor, to stop and prevent certain children from being government sponsored kidnapped. So I began being a team lead, and I started literally, like, I mean, I live on donations. I started volunteering my time, and I started to get into prevention and started preventing other children from being taken the same way. And this has been going on since 2017 all the way to right now. Okay.
Wow.
And I'll have to send you a video. I was interviewed last year, just to give you an idea, on a case that I worked with Angela's Voice down in Atlanta, Georgia. And this was a case out of Tennessee, and it was a mom and it was a ring of people using her 8-year-old little girl in a child pornography ring. It was the father, the grandfather, it was a whole town involved in ritual
Wow.
abuse. So I
Wow.
am in a task force with Dottie. It's called Save One Soul Project Task Force Coalition with Jody LaDoche. And I worked that case for a year. And so it was my team secretly behind the scenes. And by the time I was done after a year, I got that child, that mother moved into protection. So I was interviewed about that
Wow.
last October.
Now,
Okay.
T, that LaDoge case, was that something to do with the bloodline, or was that some other reason that they had originally tried to take the child?
Well,
Was, was,
let me just say this. So Jody LaDoche is actually my deliverance ministry partner in that SOSP, Save One Soul Project Coalition. But the child,
Okay.
they were bloodline people, yes. They were bloodline people that are, again, this is just a way to traumatize that child, but
Yeah.
yet these are families that are involved in the brotherhood, what I
Yeah.
call cult families. And so this little granddaughter was part of their commodity money making for the family in this
Wow.
town in Tennessee. It was a little town, but the whole town was involved. We're talking the sheriff,
Wow.
the whole
Now,
town.
this family that recently they took their kids because they wouldn't give them their infant injection. You mentioned their names and I recognized it, but um, do you think that was a bloodline deal or just an opportunity to steal children?
So, I mean, this is my opinion, okay, what I'm going to say next. So,
Okay.
I think there's a first of all, I want to just say I believe when I hear the name Rivera, I'm a
Yeah.
bloodline expert, and I know you are pretty right there with me. And I do believe it is. I do believe
Okay.
Rivera goes back to you're going back to the Castilian families. Now, does
Yeah.
the family know that? Do they would others who are fighting, do they understand the apparatus of targeting? That goes into targeting.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of
Oh,
these organizations that are doing this don't understand why. Why is that
right.
child taken? Why is that child
Right.
taken? Uh,
And the Rivera family wouldn't probably be even privy to that.
Correct.
Right?
They
Yeah.
would not. They
Yeah.
would not. And so
Wow.
medical kidnapping is just an apparatus. And let me just say one more thing. So even in my own case, I got to learn, and I'm not going to go into the spec op people that explain it to me, but they did say, I'll never forget, it was in 2015, and they said, I was sitting in a war room, and they said, all right, let me explain bloodline. Like, this is a bloodline case because they spent way too much money to get Jonah. They could have taken 30 Jonahs for $30,000 a piece. They didn't need to go to the trouble and levels they did to take your child. So I have
Yeah.
something called royal letters patent in my family. So that gets into the whys and the targeting that are on the Habsburg matriarchal side. And then during the case, I find out my mom's father was CIA. And then I find out great grandpa was a Knights Templar, and you get into we were Sinclairs, and that was another whole area. I didn't know some things about my
Right.
own family.
So all of this stuff, you were just a regular mom and didn't
Yes,
know all this stuff,
right.
but you discovered that as you were trying to figure out how to get Jonah back.
Right. I mean, when the only thing I did know was that on my mother's side, I did know my grandmother made it very, very clear that we were Habsburg Lorraines, and she made it very
Okay.
clear. So that I was made to know since I was 4. And I started to
Okay.
learn in this case that that family were brotherhood family. They were
Hmm.
involved. I
Yeah.
didn't know that. But my
Yeah.
dad's side of the family, I didn't know till I was in the middle of this case that my great grandfather, who they said was, hey, I knew he owned an oil company, but I was never told what the oil company name was because my grandmother, my father's mother, was trying to protect us, that it was Sinclair Oil.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And it wasn't till literally about 2 years ago that I had family that came to me. And actually, finally, I was in Texas, matter of fact, for a private visit. And they finally were honest with me and said, well, you need to know we're afraid to. Therefore, we were afraid to talk to you any other way except for in person. And they said there was letters patent on the Sinclair side as well. So now I
Mm.
understand they're going to track those children in those bloodlines, in those 13 family bloodlines.
Yeah.
They're going after those genetic, it's the genetic markers because it's a generational families going all the way back, and those families to spiritual gifts. They're looking for those occult spiritual gifts that go all the way back
Right.
because they feel
Right.
like children that are bloodline can dissociate easier than children who are not in the programming process, is why it
Right.
matters to these people. I want to
And
make that
the
clear.
bloodline issue goes clear back to the Tower of Babel, doesn't it?
It does, and beyond
Mm.
pre-Andaluvian. Preamble
Mm.
goes back to the fallen angels into that seed. But let's take it further. We got something that's going to happen just like in the days of Noah. So, right? And
Right, right.
so we got these guys are tracking these bloodlines. Okay, now I happen to have letters patent in my family to track and take my child. But let's talk about the Riveras. Maybe they didn't have that. So they track them through what is it? It's kind of like Eve and Satan, like nicking the heel. Well, what do they do
Yeah.
in the hospital? They nick the heel of that child. It goes into a CRISPR database and it goes all the way to the EPIC database. And
Are
EPIC,
you saying they literally do something to the heel of the child in the hospital
they do, they nick it, they
that
take,
goes into the permanent records?
right,
Wow.
blood. It's
Yeah.
all about the blood.
Yeah.
All
Come
about the
on,
blood.
girl.
That's
Wow.
right. They think they're gonna usurp the Lord Jesus Christ at the end, who's coming back on, he's coming back as a warrior.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Right.
But
He's all
right?
done being the lamb.
That's right. But it's
Yeah.
not gonna happen. So but with that
Oh,
said, so what they're doing is so they are looking for people too, especially out of something called the 13th bloodline, which is the Merovingian bloodline to them. Because why? They believe that's where the Antichrist is
Antichrist.
to
Yeah.
surface.
Yeah. I've yeah, I've heard quite a lot about that 13th bloodline and them tracing that, following that. Now, when's the last time you were in contact with Jonah?
On November 5th of 2012.
Wow. And you were in personal contact with him as mom and child.
Yes, the last thing I said to him was, if you get scared, I said, you call out to Jesus, whatever they do
Oh,
to
bless
you.
your heart.
That is the last thing I
So,
said to him.
wow. So that's been all these years ago. Now, what's the last indication of where he might be that you have?
So I'm going to be careful about this. So
Okay.
in the process of learning and doing trafficking trails, with helping, like I said, other cases, I work with hierarchy survivors as well, in Australia to New Zealand to the UK. I even worked with Evelyn Pringle over in the UK at one point in time, and Russ Disdar and the Tom Dunn people. And so
Hmm.
with that said, there's been leads. And these kind of children, like Jonah's level, are super soldier type programs, government programs, okay, which is where they move children around on super yachts, super submarines. And they're creating people to they're using them to do elemental magic and things
Yeah.
like that. So
Yeah.
which is why they're important. But we've had
Based on the propensities that have come down through the bloodline, right?
right, right.
Yeah.
So they're moving them in a figure eight, we know. And so they're going to go back to those lineage places and of where their history. That's why it's really important to work with histographers. Like I work with linguistics and etymologists. I learned to do that with teams. And so
Yeah.
we had leads to places that go back to our family lineage in like the Habsburg Lorraine side goes back to Alsace Lorraine, France. They go back into places of Belgium. My family that were the Riefenscheid Bedburgs, they ruled Lower Limburg at one time. So we knew there was in 2017 there was a sighting of my son with a couple other children that were with a VIP, it was an EU guy going from Italy to where Belgium, because they're going to go back to
Wow.
training places, in their history is what they're going to do.
And yeah. Did that sighting that would be through facial recognition technology or something or how?
Right.
Yeah.
Facial recognition. And of course, I've been making a lot of stink too. And
Yeah.
I have a Find Jonah team that's on Facebook. I have a
Yeah.
couple different teams and staff. These guys are fearless, okay, like you. That's what I
Yeah.
loved about you. I'm like, oh gosh, this is awesome, right? And so,
Yeah, we got
yes. So we've had people from all over the world helping because I'm making a stink and sitting, even when I was safe housed, I had people that were like pom-poms in their hand, like my admin, Cindy Adams, that these guys are the front runners, and we're talking to people in different countries, and people too that were counter ops people,
Yeah. Yeah.
counterintelligence too, I will tell
Wow.
you, to get help
Right.
that way, because that this goes all the way back. So I want to, so there is a big couple things I want to say that I'm gonna probably really expose at the, like maybe when I see you in person.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because this case goes back to even more than that. Like I have a brother-in-law his father's an MI6 agent. He's involved.
Really.
He's involved, and yep, and they go back to the Crown of England. So I'm just going to leave it at that. But
Wow. Yeah.
so it's part of what's happened to my son. It's part of the involvement. Yeah.
Yeah, bless
It,
your heart. Gee.
yes.
Well, for those that are listening, and you may have never heard anything like this, uh, I, I remember years ago when an old prophet from Borneo was prophesying that I was going to be involved um, in supernatural deliverances and exorcisms and things like that, spiritual warfare and deliverance.
Yes.
I remember me saying to one of his stories, I said, "Well, Jack, that seems pretty weird." I'll never forget him saying, put his hands on my shoulders. He said, "Son," it's been years ago, so I was son to him at the time. He said, "Son, the world is much weirder than you have ever imagined." And he said it with such conviction. I just thought, what kind of planet are we living on? But I just want to say to those that are listening and may have never heard anything like this, you may have never heard of the 13 families, the lineages, the whole connection with the fallen ones. Um, may have never heard of government sponsored kidnapping, but the truth is, it's very real. It's happening way, way more than you might imagine. And the overwhelming aspect is it seems like there's hardly any recourse when there's such a vast network and really almost infinite money behind it to do whatever they want, that they can just make things up and bring stooges in, and they can be the architects of a completely fraudulent scenario, and suddenly you wind up in jail and never know what hit you. But I was just on another podcast this morning with JJ Carroll.
Yes.
T, you probably know JJ, but um, we were talking about the importance of not losing hope.
That's right.
And how many years has it been since? I mean, how old would Jonah be now?
Jonah turned 17 on December
So,
18th of
wow.
24. Yeah. I've been
So
in this a long time.
his whole childhood has been stolen.
Right.
But here's our confidence: there is a God.
Yes.
Uh, his ways are past finding out. Most often, they're much slower than we would like them to be. But God's on our side, and with the help of God and by banding together with one another, we can make a difference. We can expose these things, and we can have confidence that the rampant activities of evil in the earth, they do not go unnoticed by God, and it will be payday someday. And so, for anybody that's listening, I want to invite you to come to the Rev 17 conference. T will be one of the presenters there. We do have just a vast array of presenters that are coming from different angles, but they're all focusing on the evil of child abuse, the evil of child sex trafficking, and the evil network that's behind it all. If you're watching, the reason we named the conference Rev 17, it stands for Revelation 17. It's a promise in the Bible. It foresees the very days we're living at. And it says that evil will be at its a peak of power. There will be evil like there's never been on the planet before, which is sobering. But also that the glory of God will be poured out, and that there will be a great conflict between the kingdom of God and the kingdom of Satan, or between the kingdom of heaven and the forces of hell, or between good and bad, however you want to say it. There's going to be a great in-day conflict. Now, it says that the systems, and that's what T has been talking about and what she's been working to expose. There is an evil system. In the Bible, it's called Mystery Babylon. And there is a impersonage of corporate evil that is called the whore of Babylon. But what a wonderful promise in Revelation 17 is that the evil system and this personage that represents the evil system and guides the evil system, that has made the kings of the earth wealthy through their trafficking of human souls.
Yes.
Isn't that amazing, T, that that was specifically exposed uh, 2,000 years ago? And the
Correct.
promise of Rev 17 is that whole system and the spirit behind it will be destroyed in a single day. And so that's the hope that we have to hold on to. How's it going to happen? Well, it'll be through the power of God, but God's method is mankind. And so it's as people like T. Hogan and others that they say this is a terrible thing. We're going to trust God that we can become a part of the solution and expose this. And so T does her part. I do my part as the pastor of the Church of Glad Tidings. And then these guys like J.J. Carroll, others, everybody has to do their part. And so what T and I would like to do is, first of all, invite you to join us for the Rev 17 conference. You can go to
Yeah.
peaceofheaven.life or to churchofgladtidings.com. That's peaceofheaven.life or churchofgladtidings.com, and sign up for this conference. You'll be able to hear T. Chances are that you might get to meet her, talk to her, find out how you can help more in her specific case, and in general, how you can help be a part of the solution instead of part of the problem. So that's coming up again in June 20th, 21st, 22nd. T and I will be there along with, 15, 18 other guests. We're going to have a great time. And we're all going to be focusing on this promise that the systems of gross evil and the spirit behind that system are going to be destroyed in a single day, and the kings of the earth will mourn and say, whatever happened to the whore that rode on the beast and made us rich through her trafficking? But T and I are going to know what happened to her, and everybody else that's helping in this effort. So I hope you'll come out and join us for that, and just be a part of the solution. Um, T, any last words before we go?
Yes. Yes, I what you just said about being part of the solution. And I would think it's this is time. This is now, like we are in that such a time as this, the Esther time,
Come
to
on.
yes, to band together to take action. No more talking heads. This is the time where all these amazing people that are coming to this. This is so God that put this together. I gotta say,
Yes, he did.
in Jesus' name, because it is all of us. It's going to take all of us. We are that body of Christ
Come
because one
on.
is the head, one is the arm, one is the foot. This is that
Yeah.
time. This is the body. And you know what? With that said, the Lord is going to give us in our and through the Holy Spirit, He's going to give us the roar to say, "Hey, I got this solution,
Yeah.
and we're going to do it together."
Come
Amen.
on, girl. And
Amen.
T. Hogan is the foot. I know that because she's kicking butt and taking names out there.
That's right.
Anyway,
Amen.
appreciate what you do, T. We love you. Everybody pray for Jonah and for the many other children like that are out there. And they're in the jaws of hell. They're in this system that's called Mystery Babylon. And they're under this spirit that is called the Great Whore of Babylon. But
Yes.
we do have confidence that God is going to help us. He's going to
Yes.
show up in the showdown and throw down. And so we're
Amen.
excited about that. Wherever you are, remember, get involved. Don't just become aware of the problem. That's a good start. But become aware of how you specifically can be a part of the solution, because it's time to roar.